Have you ever wondered what would happen if you mixed an all-female writing team, bad animation in a wannabe anime style, and 70 years of Western cultural rot? Well, you no longer have to wonder. Meet High Guardian Spice, the anime that embodies everything wrong with Western media. Now many may ask, what the hell is a High Guardian Spice? It's a new animated show created by the company Crunchyroll that released last month. Crunchyroll is a Western anime distributing company that usually just translates anime, but in this case actually tried to make one on their own. Yes, High Guardian Spice calls itself an anime, but you'd be forgiven for not knowing that from the animation. It looks much more like a Steven Universe spin-off than anything to do with Japan. It was easy to miss this show's release since it was announced all the way back in 2018, but was shelved up until this year. From the get-go, people suspected from the character designs that the show would be abysmal. The announcement trailer was ratioed into oblivion accordingly. But were people just being judgmental and judging a book by its cover? Maybe people's instincts were wrong and the show would actually be good.
I'm transgender.
You asked him to not be a jerk, but that's not how tormentors work.
Okay, no, their predictions were exactly right. In fact, little did people know just how bad things would get. For your entertainment and my own curiosity, I trekked through this show to see what it was like and what messages it was putting forward. Yes, I actually watched this show. The pain was immense, but you do what you have to do for the people. I've also watched a few other reviews of the show, and many people seem to want to avoid criticizing the political and cultural messages that the show puts across. As you would expect of my channel, I will not be avoiding discussing these things. I did a poll and the majority of you wanted to see this, so consider this video my review and autopsy of this catastrophe. This is why High Guardian Spice is everything wrong with Western media. Let's start from the beginning. Who are the people at Crunchyroll behind High Guardian Spice? To understand artwork, it often helps to understand the artist. The show's creator is Ray Rodriguez, a transgender cartoonist from Los Angeles. Don't worry, I'm sure this fact won't have any effect on the writing of the show whatsoever. Another lead writer involved in the show's creation was Amalia Lavari, a woman from Los Angeles who says on her Twitter she goes by any pronouns. Then there's the co-developer, Claire Stenger, who had a rather odd Instagram account when I looked at it. Hashtag abolish AmeriKKKa, hashtag transcend mortal flesh. Seems like a normal and stable individual who you'd want making your media. Also involved in the show's writing was Kate Leth, Katie McVeigh, who was involved with the infamous Bill Nye Saves the World. Remember that? The show with the homosexual ice cream? And Crystal Peluso, whose IMDb says she specializes in showcasing strong female roles and diverse storytelling. Now you might have noticed something about all of the writers involved in this show. They're all female. I didn't cherry pick, they're all female. Apparently this was even a goal Crunchyroll specifically set out to achieve. Margaret Dean, head of the feminist NGO Women in Animation, bragged that High Guardian Spice has a 100% female writing room, which she justifies by saying the show is about young girls. I guess Japanese anime creators didn't get that memo. Maybe if Crunchyroll didn't block all of their critics, they would know this isn't necessary. In any case, she also brags about how the show's crew are very ethnically and LGBTQ+ diverse.
It's a very modern reflection of the world. Our characters are really diverse, our cast is really diverse, and that's one of the things that excited me the most about it.
This is the first problem with High Guardian Spice that is common across all Western media. Filling important jobs with females or LGBTQ people just for the sake of having them in the project. Are they actually good writers? Are they actually the best person fit for the job? These questions aren't asked. Meritocracy is treated as a sexist and patriarchal concept because it often leads to sex inequalities. Though having 100% of your writers be female is also a sex inequality. Anyway, because people are being put into roles simply because of their sex or sexuality, this causes, as you might expect, deficiencies. Deficiencies which you'll see in this video become all too clear throughout High Guardian Spice. Now let's dive into the show's story and characters and see where the problems start to pop up. Let's meet our characters. We first have our main character, Rosemary, and then there's her best friend, Sage. Rosemary's personality could best be described as the quirky and loud girl, while Sage is more on the quiet and shy side. In what's a running theme, both characters have vaguely tannish skin. Almost like the creators didn't want to make them white, but weren't sure what race to actually make them. Other characters include Parsley, a blonde-haired blue-eyed dwarf, and Thyme, a black elf. Hold on a minute here. Rosemary, Sage, Parsley, Thyme. Aren't those spices? Ah! The show doesn't even get its own racial propaganda right, though, because the Aryan dwarf is the friendliest character in the show, while the black elf is the cattiest. A little racist there, High Guardian Spice.
First lesson is how to take pride in your weapons.
Listen, you pointy...
Like the creators of the show, all of the main characters are female and of questionable sexual orientation. The outfit design in the show is all over the place, with some characters dressed like they're in the Middle Ages, while others are dressed like it's 2021. This lesbian couple in the show is a great example. If I could say one positive thing about High Guardian Spice's character design, it's that at least most of the characters are dressed modestly, and there's almost no hypersexualized designs in the show. So that's nice. Alright, so how about the show's plot? Maybe that'll be decent. It's not. It's basically like Harry Potter, but more badly written and less interesting. The show begins with Rosemary and Sage immediately setting off for what's called High Guardian Academy. And I do mean immediately. Within the first 2 minutes of the show, they're already off and on their way. From the show's very first scene, the pacing is already bizarre. I mean, just watch this.
We'll scale mountains, and fight mermaids, and explore precipices, and crevices, and we'll be totally fearsome dudes.
The two heroines even get to their academy by taking a train, just like Harry Potter. Except unlike Harry Potter, it isn't actually explained what they're going to this academy to learn. To be a High Guardian basically just means you study and learn a certain skill, like sword fighting or archery. It's extremely vague, and I'll go into more detail later. In any case, most of the show is them at this academy doing random activities. Towards the end of the show, more plot points get sewn in, but it's nothing too interesting. It's kind of like a slice of life anime, but a staple of that genre is comedy, and High Guardian Spice's attempts at comedy fall flat to say the least. The only times I was laughing was when I was cringing at how bad the jokes were.
The first class of the day is ethics. Sounds dry. You know who won't be joining us in ethics class? A dragon. Wanna know why? Because you don't need rules when your face is a blowtorch.
Comedy. As for voice acting, the show leaves a lot to be desired, to say the least. The best voice actress in the show is Rosemary, but even she sounds like she smokes 3 packs of cigarettes a day. I mean, really, what is this voice acting?
How's school?
Oh, it's fine. We're on break. We got catapulted out because of a traveler infestation.
You go to High Guardian?
Yep, I am Slime Boy.
This guy sounds like he phoned it in. Like, literally phoned it in from his basement. This is another one of the main problems with the show. Sacrificing the quality of basically everything, story, pacing, even things like voice acting, in order to push degenerate propaganda. And boy, is this show full to the brim with that kind of propaganda. Let's get into some of it. In the second episode, Rosemary attends an ethics class, and we hear a bit of what the teacher has to tell the students. She tells the class that fear of the other is what leads to violence. Really, that's what leads to violence? What about justified violence? Oddly enough, that doesn't get talked about, despite the school training people to use justified violence. Also, it's not lost on me that they chose to have a devil character teach ethics. Now at this point you're probably wondering, what exactly is a Guardian in High Guardian Spice? One thing we do know is that almost all of the female characters are training for a historically male profession. Rosemary wants to be a swordsman, Thyme wants to be an archer, and Parsley trains to be a blacksmith. I didn't see any females at the academy training for historically female roles, such as housewives, healers, or clothing makers. Sage apparently goes to the school to become a healer, but we never actually see her healing anyone. Instead, we only see her use magic to fight people. Rosemary's mother was also the soldier of the family, while her father is a cook. We thus see another area where High Guardian Spice shows a broader problem in Western media. a methodical hatred of nature and traditional gender roles. High Guardian Spice may take place in a fantasy world, but it's still in a Middle Ages setting, and there's only so many ways we can suspend disbelief. It just doesn't work that this kind of society would be training women for combat instead of men. In the real-life medieval era, this would have been suicidal, which is why no one did it. But for the writers of High Guardian Spice, and so many others like them, that would be sexist. Reality is sexist. So we not only can't show it in a story, we have to show the total opposite. In another storyline in the show, Parsley's parents try to get her to quit the academy and come home to continue helping them to raise their large family. The show essentially recreates a common family versus career decision that many modern females face today. The show, predictably, comes firmly down on the side of individualism and careerism. Though Parsley does agree to visit on some weekends, implying that she'll try to balance her family and career as so many modern women try to do. This is the classic "you can have it all" message that Western media has been trying to push for something like 30-40 years. Probably longer. But it's very, very hard for this to work in real life. For women, it really generally is either career or family. How about the male characters in the show? What are they like? Well, the male character who gets the most screen time is a student named Snapdragon. Snapdragon is the kind of guy you'd expect an all-feminist writing team to create. He's extremely feminine and constantly complains about the gender expectations he has to live up to. I wasn't sure if he's intended to be a femboy, transgender, or what have you, but by the middle of the show he's cross-dressing, so take that how you will. Another character is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed male named Aster, and as soon as he's introduced, you just know he's going to be some kind of villain. And as it turns out, he's written as a stereotypical misogynist.
Aster, please let me do this.
Shh. Listen, Rhubarb, no one's probably ever told you this before, but you're sort of cute. And that's your thing, you're pretty good at it. But my thing is that I'm good at navigating. So let me do what I do best, and you just keep being kind of adorable. Okay?
Oh, I almost forgot the character Mandrake. He's a straight white male, but also the villain. High Guardian Spice's war on nature and traditional ideas of life doesn't just end with gender and family roles. Throughout the show, we repeatedly hear of concepts of new magic and old magic. Old magic, we're told, is outdated and dumb. Apparently, new magic is all that people need. I wonder what the meaning of the show is trying to convey here. Oh, tradition bad. When it's explained to the students at the academy what being a High Guardian means, part of the vows are to never be constrained by the relics of history. In other words, again, tradition bad. This also plays out in a scene where one of the teachers tells Snapdragon to give up the axe that his father passed down to him because he shouldn't let the expectations of his parents influence him. Also, did I mention that almost half of the characters in the show are gay? There are also transgender side characters who forward some of the most ham-fisted LGBT propaganda in the history of animation.
I'm transgender. I was born into a female body, but it wasn't the right body for me. So, I used new magic to change it. I take a potion once a month to keep the spell active.
You what?
To call this art would be an insult to art. This is simply propaganda. Not that if it were subtle, it would be any better. But wait, there's more. This guy gets flat out groomed.
But you can't change what you were born into.
Snapdragon, listen.
You say I can change paths, but it's not like I can just stop being a guy.
Do you know anything about transition magic?
I wish I could say what I just showed you is fake. It is not. Now, the creators of the show would justify scenes like this by saying it's necessary for so-called representation. Well, where's my Christian representation? Why don't we get a character? Also, what about the D-trans community? People who were told they were transgender and it ruined their lives until they came back to their normal sex. They don't deserve representation? What you have to understand is that people advocating for so-called representation are really just saying represent what I like. Now, to be perfectly honest with you all, I don't know who the target audience for this show was. With its style and narrative, you'd expect it to be for teenagers. But then it hits you with a content warning at the start of every episode, and has all kinds of adult themes. So I guess the target demographic was college-aged women? It's hard to say. One thing is for sure though, no one of any age demographic should watch this show. I've made this video because this show really just encapsulates so much of what's wrong with Western culture at the moment. If I don't critique these things, at this point, I'm not sure who will. I'll also tell you why I think Western media has become like this. It's a combination of civil rights law, the long-term consequences of liberalism, downright evil people being allowed to run and influence many of our society's largest companies. Oh, and let's not forget, a conservative establishment that's designed to conserve nothing. All of that is mixing to create this hell. The final episode of High Guardian Spice ends in a way that sets up another season. But given the backlash the show's received, it might not receive another one. But regardless of whether it does or doesn't, the kind of bad messages that High Guardian Spice puts forward are still common in the rest of Western media. There are a lot of content creators out there who want media to go back to the 80s or the 90s. You know, back when movies still had horrible moral messages, but at least they had macho men, I guess. Saying you want to go back to then is like saying you want to go from third stage cancer back to second stage cancer. The real way to save Western media is to get back in touch with the soul that made Western civilization great in the first place. What's funny is, as bad as High Guardian Spice was, it still could have been worse. None of the main characters engage in out-of-wedlock sex, so that was a nice surprise. Also, even though they do have strained relationships with their parents, they do try to mend them over the course of the show. A lot of Western shows just no longer show parents at all, as if they don't even exist. You get the feeling that the writers are striving for a higher ideal, but they don't know how to express it. And that's kind of the consequence of removing God from your worldview. It's easy and fun to mock High Guardian Spice, but we should also remember why it exists. And that even in failures like this, there are still things we can take away from it all. I hope this video has helped you all to do that. On that note, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Stay safe out there.